Hello friends, today I will discuss a book very essential for gender studies. Name of the book is Masculinities Without Men, Female Masculinity in 20th Century Fiction. It is written by Jean Booby Noble. I am repeating again the name of the book. The name is Masculinities Without Men, Female Masculinity in 20th Century Fictions. This book was originally published in 2004. Jean Booby Noble was a Canadian writer. He was a professor in York University. Booby Noble or Jean Booby Noble or J. Booby Noble is a professor at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He is the author of the books Masculinities Without Men and Sons of the Movement, and is one of the foremost scholars of transgender studies in North America. Here in this book, Noble explores how the construction of gender was thrown into crisis during the 20th century, resulting in a permanent rupture in the sex-gender system, and how masculinity became an unstable category altered across times, region, social classes, and ethnicity. Noble demonstrates that transgender and transsexual masculinity began to emerge as a unique category in late 20th century fiction, distinct from lesbian or female masculinity. This book actually a sexuality studies series. This series focuses on original, provocative, scholarly research examining from a range of perspectives that complexity of human sexual practice, identity, community, and desire. Books in the series explore how sexuality interacts with other aspects of society, such as law, education, feminism, racial diversity, the family, policing, sport, government, religion, mass media, medicine, and employment. The series provides a broad public venue for nurturing debate, cultivating talent, and expanding knowledge of human sexual expression, past and present. If we see the contents of this book, we will get first acknowledgements, then introduction, the new men of 1998. Next, we will find chapter number 1. The name of the chapter 1 is Alibis of Essence and Enemies Within at the Well of Obscenity. Next, we will get chapter 2. The name of the chapter 2 is Passionate Fictions, Radcliffe Halsey's The Well of Loneliness. Next, we will get chapter 3. The name of the chapter 3 is Impressions of the Man, Sacred Countries and the Stonebus Blues. Next we will get chapter 4. The name of chapter 4 is Boys Do Cry, Hilary Swank and the Politics of a Pronoun. Next we will get chapter number 5. The name of the chapter 5 is Postscript, Notes Towards a Radical Thinking of the Politics of Gender. In this book we are getting totally 5 chapters, and before these 5 chapters we are getting acknowledgement and introduction, the new men of 1998. In acknowledgements, Booby Noble says, it is by now commonplace to say that a work is the product of many minds, hearts, and conversations. This was true of the project which launched this current work, and it remains true of this final book version. Booby Noble confesses that finally, it is to brazen femme diva omissore H. Dryden that I dedicate this work. Your fierce love and resolute desire remake me on a daily basis. Without you, I would not be half of what I am today, nor would I have had half the fun. It is the time we have spent in quiet paradox that has made these noisy words possible. I remain devoted and your service always. In introduction, in the chapter or part, introduction, Bubinovel mentions a line. He begins with the line from the book Diking Over Genitals. This book was written by Gerald Hannon. From this Diking Over Genitals, Bubinovel select the line. The line is, many of these guys have been in what would be called lesbian relationships for years. Next, Bubinovel mentions another line from the book FTM, Female to Male Transsexuals in Society. This book was written by Holly Devar. From this book of Holly Devar, Bubinovel mentions a line. The line is, I am a lesbian man. The name of the beginning part of this book is, that is the full title of this beginning part. The part is Introduction, the New Men of 1998. Here Bubinovel says, my work here inevitably raises questions about film subjectivity that are beyond its scope. I do not attempt to answer those questions but instead bracket them as important touchstones for future research. That said, later chapters do suggest that female masculinity often needs to bracket femininity in order to foreground masculinity, something that has particularly disturbing and misogynist implications for femininity. Nobel says, by discourse, I mean both speech and language as signifying systems. These sign systems are produced and manipulated in and through history, popular culture, print-based media and fictions, institutions, and their effective practices, everyday talk, narrative, community-based or social infrastructures like news magazines and so on, which all claim some truth value. Next, we are going to start the first chapter, chapter 1. The name of the chapter is Alibis of Essence and Enemies Within. Here we get something like this. The 20th century homosexual became a personage, a past, a case history, and a childhood in addition to being a type of life, a life form, and a morphology with an indiscrete anatomy and possibility mysterious psychology. Nothing that went into his total composition was unaffected by his sexuality. It was everywhere in him, at the root of all his actions, because it was their insidious and indefinitely active principle, written immodestly on his face and body, because it was a secret that always gave itself away. Next, here Nobel mentions Foucault. Foucault is, of course, writing about the homosexual as male, but his argument does not preclude the possibility of reading what the earlier sexuologists identified as the female invert. Nobel writes that, interestingly, to render means not only to give in return or to give back, but also to reproduce, portray, give representation or performance or effect of. The latter definition being the one that gave the term its currency within early modernist poetics. Nobel certainly is evoking those definitions. However, it is the meaning to produce for inspection that best serves his purpose here. Nobel argue in chapter 2. Here he says, Radcliffe Hall constructs the Wells's protagonist out of the discourses on masculinity available to her at that time. Discourses produced and reified in and around the Pemberton Building trial and policed by the judicial gaze, heteronormativity, British aristocracy, and British nationalism. Stephen fails, as it were, because those discourses require that this masculine subject be housed in a male body. Now we are starting chapter number 2. The name of the chapter is Passionate Fictions. Here we will get some detailing about Radcliffe Halsey's The Whale of Loneliness. During the writing of this book, an event occurred that suggests that only now has the discursive and constructionist turn finally been taken. On Wednesday, 24 March 1999, the Director of Civil Status in Montreal agreed to allow a female to male transsexual, that is FTM, to change his gender legally from female to male, even though he had not undergone genital surgery. Novel mentions that a Bilden Roman is a novel that follows the development of the hero from childhood into adulthood, usually highlighting a troubled quest for identity. When the novel describes the formation of a young artist, as does The Whale of Loneliness, then it is called Constel Roman. Constel Roman. Next, novel says that I am using the phrase femaled panic to describe a different kind of response by a female embodied man who has wrongfully been read and treated as female. In course of discussion, Nobel mentions the first known FTM, transsexual autobiography. The name of this FTM autobiography is Emergence, a transsexual autobiography. Mario Martino, a name of a person, recalls buying a copy of The Whale of Loneliness, hoping to help his female partner come to terms with their situation. It did not work, and Mario Martino explains the reason. Mario Martino says, about the love relationship between two women, it was so honestly and beautifully written that Becky felt she could accept their lessons. Does everyone feel this way, Mary? Heavens, no. Besides, Becky, you and I are not lesbians. We relate as men to women, women to men. I could never fit the mold of women. And next, I am going to say something. Chapter number 3. The name of the chapter 3 is Impressions of the Man. Here, Nobel says, I will not attempt a definition of what may or may not constitute a lesbian or butt or transsexual text. I attempt instead to provide a genealogy of a specific reading practice as well as of a relation. I am not so much interested in what a lesbian or bus or transsexual text is about, rather in what it allows a reading to do. Since this narrative serves to frame a number of these issues that are taken up in further detail later in the chapter, I let the trans stand, in part of problematize them and also to keep them from running away with themselves. In this chapter, he also describes about what is silence, about whiteness in masculinities, about the trans narratives of Bild and Roman, etc. Now I am going to say something from the chapter number 4. The name of the chapter is Boys Do Cry. This is the last chapter. Here, Bobby Novel writes, to avoid confusion between Lena Tisdale, the character in Boys Don't Cry, and Lena Tisdale, the actual person, I use Lena, when referring to the figure upon whom Lena is loosely based. In this chapter, we get some details of the book Boys Do Cry. In this book, there is a character called Charles Locks. This Charles Locks was a sheriff of Richardson Country. This Charles Locks had allowed the two men who raped Brandon on 25th December 1993 to remain at large and to go on to kill Brandon along with his two friends on 31st December. The suit also charges Locks with deliberately inflicting emotional distress on Brandon while interviewing him when he reported the rape. Judge Cody awarded $86,224 in damages and found Lothar and Nissan 85% liable to Brandon's death. Now I am going for the overview of this book. Conventional ideas about gender and sexuality dictate that people born with male bodies naturally possesses both a man's identity and a man's right to authority. This is a richly theoretical text explicating and explaining intricate socio-cultural phenomena with meticulous fitness. It approaches important literary and filmic texts and key areas of gender and sexuality studies in a thoughtful manner. Its thorough theoretical context makes it an important resource for scholars invested in gender study and theory. Bobby Noble is clearly in the process of striking out a provocative and cutting edge terrain within gender studies.